I just need to know we're okay. Then I can breathe. That's what the nervous system of someone with anxious attachment would sound like if it had a voice. And it's not just about wanting closeness with the other person. And it's not about only fearing abandonment. Sometimes it's about needing another person's presence or approval or participation just to feel emotionally regulated. A lot of people talk about anxious attachment like it's this constant craving for reassurance and connection. And yes, that is definitely a big part of it. But what we don't talk about nearly often enough, and we should because it's quite helpful, is this. Anxiously attached people often use the relationship or the other person to emotionally regulate themselves, to act as a stand-in for their own inability to regulate themselves. And then that becomes a serious problem in the relationship, because when you don't know how to calm your own system, you have no choice but to turn to the relationship or to the other person to do it for you. Hi, I'm Madalena, and this is You Reclaimed. Around here, we talk a lot about how early life trauma and emotional dysregulation in general, how those things affect our adult relationships, our identity, how we present ourselves in the world, how we relate to other people. And we do this so that we can take control of our lives and live on our own terms.
Wait, did you subscribe yet? I have a lot more to share and I'd love to have you here for it. It really helps my channel grow and I appreciate it so much.
So, what does it look like when you use the relationship to emotionally regulate? Here are some signs that you might be outsourcing emotional regulation to your partner or to the relationship itself, even if you don't realize you're doing it. You find that your emotions spiral the moment that your partner pulls away or creates any distance. Not because your partner is abandoning you or because they've done something particularly wrong. Sometimes it's just that they feel overwhelmed or need space. And your system can't handle that kind of space. You feel physically agitated when there's tension between you, like your nervous system is locked in a state of, I can't catch a full breath or I can't settle until we are okay. And you find yourself sometimes over apologizing, even when you didn't do anything wrong, because all you want to do is get the relationship back to good terms and good feelings. You feel like you're falling apart emotionally when your partner becomes emotionally distant. And maybe the most telling sign is that you can keep an argument going or stay emotionally hooked into some kind of conflict, not because you're trying to hurt your partner or because you're really invested in the resolution, but because you literally cannot regulate your own emotions enough to let the argument go. Sometimes you can start criticizing your partner or hyper-focusing on their moods or asking what's wrong over and over again. Not because they're doing something wrong, but because it distracts you from having to sit in your own emotional state. And in this way, you tend to hide behind your partner or behind the relationship's emotional temperature. And you do this as a way to avoid dealing with your own feelings. And those feelings might be things like fear of losing the relationship or insecurity about your partner or about yourself. Jealousy that feels too overwhelming to name it directly, to confront it directly. And instead of facing those feelings head on, which is difficult to do, you try to manage your partner instead. This is why we focus so much on our partner when we're anxiously attached, because you think that's where the solution lives, in regulating your own emotional state. And we can get into why this actually happens, because it's not happening because you're being too needy or because you're being too much. There's deeper psychological framework behind that. Emotional regulation is a skill that we learn. And for people with anxious attachment, that skill often is quite underdeveloped. In early childhood, if you grew up with caregivers who were not consistent, meaning sometimes they responded with comfort and connection, and other times they just didn't, then your nervous system learns something very specific. I can't regulate my emotions by myself. I only feel okay when someone else shows up and helps me to regulate my own emotion. And in this way, soothing became something that only happened in connection with another person. And worse, it happened unpredictably. Sometimes the other person showed up for you, and sometimes they didn't. So your nervous system learned to stay on high alert, constantly scanning for signs of connection or disconnection with other people. And that became the emotional blueprint of how you perceive love and relating to other people. It became how you relate to closeness and intimacy as an adult. So you don't just want the connection with another person, you need it because without it, you don't feel like you can stabilize yourself. And in this way, over time, you start to believe that you're not okay on your own, that you need a partner who's more calm, more emotionally stable, more regulated, because you don't feel like you are any of those things. So you come to rely on your partner to feel more grounded and stable. And while this sounds like connection in a way, what it really becomes is a kind of dependence. And this kind of dependence, it's not interdependence, it's not co-regulation, it's simply dependence from your side. It prevents you from developing emotionally, because if you always need someone else to regulate you, then you never get the opportunity to learn how to develop those skills yourself, right? How to regulate yourself. This is why so many anxiously attached people feel uncomfortable being single, why they feel fragmented and panicked without a relationship in their life. Because psychologically, when you're anxiously attached, you tend to operate from the idea that I need someone to complete the circuit that makes me complete. Without the other person, I feel unsteady and unheld and unmoored, like you're at sea without an anchor by yourself. But the paradox is that the more you outsource that regulation, the harder it becomes to develop the self-soothing system that is actually missing inside of you. And the way it shows up over and over again in adult relationships is that you don't just chase connection because you have too many feelings or because you're too emotional. It might look like that on the surface, but underneath that, you chase connection because your entire nervous system is locked in place, screaming, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this on my own. And when your system is that dysregulated, your partner inevitably starts to feel it too. It's hard not to, right? They can't not feel that kind of energy. They begin to feel responsible for your emotional state. Like they have to manage their words, their tone, their reactions, their actions, even their silences, just to keep you steady. That's what creates so much pressure in a relationship where one person is very much on the side of anxious attachment and cannot self-regulate by themselves. That kind of pressure, it creates distance, right? It's hard for it not to. When your partner does eventually pull back, maybe because they feel overwhelmed or confused or just plain exhausted, it only acts to confirm your worst fear, that they're not going to stick around and help me regulate. And now I'm on my own again. This is where things get difficult for the anxiously attached, because that fear, the fear of emotional abandonment, it doesn't just make you sad, it creates panic in you because you don't know ways of handling that state on your own. This is also why you start testing the relationship emotionally, subtly or not so subtly, just to see if your partner will stay. This is why you push your partner and prod at them. You overtalk, you plead, you escalate emotionally, right? We're very good at escalating when we're anxiously attached. And it's not about wanting a fight. A lot of the time, you don't even know what the fight is about. You just want the relief that the fight gives you. If you're anxiously attached, you probably recognize that word instantly, relief, because when you've sat in an argument and demanded more answers, more conversation, more connection, deeper resolution, when what you feel at the end of that is finally relief. But doing this eventually makes your partner pull away because they don't know how to exist without being constantly tested or emotionally overtaxed. In this way, the relationship ends up fulfilling the very fear that you started with, which is that my needs will not be met by this person that I love. So the very act of trying to get regulated through someone else, it pushes them away. And it drops you right back into your own dysregulation. I'll give you an example of this sort of dynamic from my own life, because this played out for many, many years in my early marriage, when I was still trying to work out this pattern in myself. I absolutely hated being in the middle of any kind of conflict, even tiny disagreements. I could not sleep at night. I couldn't physically relax. The amount of tension in my body was so overwhelming. It was like I couldn't sit with it for more than a few seconds without needing something to happen. So I would ruminate for hours. And instead of finding ways to calm myself down, I didn't even have tools or know how to do this in the first place. I would emotionally storm my husband. I'd start arguments, further arguments, ask for clarity. I'd ask again. I'd plead for us to fix the problem immediately. And I would keep doing that until he helped me feel better. It didn't come from a need to punish my husband or because he was doing anything particularly wrong. These were mostly harmless arguments between us. They weren't about terrible, incompatibilities. They were just basic disagreements, but I had no tools to calm myself down. The only way I knew how to regulate was through him and through his emotional stability. It's a good thing he still is a very emotionally stable man. If this is something you have trouble with yourself, regulating yourself emotionally when you feel really dysregulated, check the link below the description for this video for the Calm Down Toolkit. It's completely free to download, no pressure, and it simply gives you the kinds of tools that I've learned to use over the years. Walking meditation, EFT tapping, everything I've learned and used over the last couple of decades. So if you're stuck in this kind of pattern on a regular basis, what now? What do you do with this? Because the key is not to shame yourself for needing regulation or not have relationships. And if you've been watching this channel regularly, you probably know I'm not big on shame in the first place. Not just because I find it unhelpful, but because shame tends to push our needs further into the subconscious. And the way we help ourselves, I think, is by pulling those shadows upwards into the light of consciousness so that we can work with them, not by pushing them down and pretending they're not there. So again, the key is not to shame yourself for needing regulation. The key is to slowly start amassing a set of tools that let you regulate yourself from the inside out. So let's take it one step at a time. Step one, learn to recognize your emotional activation. Start noticing what it is exactly that triggers you. When your heart is racing, when your thoughts are spiraling, your chest feels tight, and name what's happening out loud with your voice. I don't just mean slapping on words like anxiety or anger. This is where the expansion of your emotional vocabulary becomes essential. Because if you're angry that your partner won't comfort you in the way you need, that anger has layers underneath. There might be real vulnerability under there, like fear, raw, aching insecurity that says, I'm scared you don't love me. I'm scared that you'll leave. I'm scared that this whole thing is falling apart. And you can't meet those needs if you don't know what they are exactly. So first you have to unearth them. Step two, use interoception, which basically just means becoming aware of what's happening inside your body. Ask yourself, where exactly in my body do I feel this feeling? What part of my body is carrying this particular emotion? What is it doing there? Is it tight? Is it a buzzing feeling? Is it a heavy, clenched, prickly kind of feeling? There are somatic techniques like body scans, gentle movement, breath-focused meditation that help you sit with your body rather than abandon it and try to escape it when your body becomes loud in what it needs. Step three, start to regulate from the bottom up, which means use breath work, move your body, ground your senses, do anything that helps to bring your nervous system down from a 10, let's say, the height of feeling of dysregulation, to a more manageable 6. And most importantly, don't jump straight into fixing the relationship. Don't leap into more conversations or try to resolve everything instantly or push for immediate repair before you've calmed your own system. Because unless you're in an abusive or unsafe relationship, emotional regulation, it has to start with you. Even in the best relationships in the world, your partner cannot act as your nervous system. When you rely on them to do that for you, it puts enormous pressure on the relationship. Pressure that big love even can't hold. Not forever. So when you feel dysregulated, don't just ask, why won't my partner help me to regulate? Also ask, how am I contributing to this? Where are these feelings actually coming from? What is it that I can do right now to soothe myself without needing my partner's help? I think it always starts at the somatic level, regulating the body. And from there, you can start working with your conscious thoughts, right? That's what we mean by working from the root upwards, right? You can start working with your conscious thoughts and your fears, your insecurities, because the goal is not perfect independence. The goal is to be able to self-regulate enough so that you and your partner can then co-regulate together in a safe relationship without collapsing the relationship in on itself. That way the relationship becomes a source of support for both people and not a lifeline. It's difficult for it to be a lifeline. It doesn't have to collapse under the weight of your own unmet needs. If you've been using your partner or the relationship in this way to regulate your emotion, it doesn't mean you can't change this. And it doesn't mean there is something wrong with you. It just means that you can't do it any other way for now. That you don't have the right tools, but you can start learning them. And the more you learn to regulate internally, the less emotionally reactive your entire relationship becomes. Let me know in the comments if any of this sounds familiar to you, if you do this in your own relationship, and if you enjoy listening to this kind of content, consider subscribing, liking this video so we can keep going together. See you next time.